Hello, I'm Codename Cosplay, and I will be reading for you today from Good Omens in my Aziraphale cosplay. Citron du Chevaux was Tonton Macoute, a traveling Ungan, magician or priest. Vodun is a very interesting religion for the whole family, even those members of it who are dead. He had a satchel over his shoulder containing magical plants, medicinal plants, bits of wild cat, black candles, a powder derived chiefly from the skin of a certain dried fish, a dead centipede, a half bottle of Chivas Regal, 10 Rothmans, and a copy of What's On in Haiti. He hefted the knife and, with an experienced slicing motion, cut the head from a black cockerel. Blood washed over his right hand. "Loa ride me," he intoned. "Gros bon ange, come to me." "Where am I?" he said. "Is that my gros bon ange?" he asked himself. "I think that's a rather personal question," he replied. "I mean, as these things go, but one tries, as it were. One does one's best." Citron found one of his hands reaching for the cockerel. "Rather unsanitary place to do your cooking, don't you think? Out here in the jungle, having a barbecue, are we? What kind of place is this?" "Haitian," he answered. "Damn, nowhere near. Still, could be worse. Ah, I must be on my way. Be good." And Citron du Chevaux was alone in his head. "Loas be buggered," he muttered to himself. He stared into nothing for a while, and then reached for the satchel and his bottle of Chivas Regal. There are at least 2 ways to turn someone into a zombie. He was going to take the easiest. The surf was loud on the beaches. The palms shook. A storm was coming. The lights went up. The Power Cable Nebraska Evangelical Choir launched into "Jesus is the Telephone Repairman" on the switchboard of my life, and almost drowned out the sound of the rising wind. Marvin O. Bagman adjusted his tie, checked his grin in the mirror, patted the bottom of his personal assistant, Miss Cindy Kellerhall's Penthouse Pet of the Month 3 years ago last July, but she had put all that behind her when she got career, and walked out onto the studio floor. "Jesus won't cut you off before you're through. With him you won't never get across the line. And when your bill comes, it'll all be properly itemized. He's the telephone repairman on the switchboard of my life," the choir sang. Marvin was fond of that song. He had written it himself. Other songs he had written included "Happy Mr. Jesus," "Jesus, Can I Come and Stay at Your Place," "That Old Fiery Cross," "Jesus is the Sticker on the Bumper of My Soul," and "When I'm Swept Up by the Rapture, Grab the Wheel of My Pickup." They were available on Jesus Is My Buddy, LP, cassette, and CD, and were advertised every 4 minutes on Bagman's Evangelical Network. $12.95 per LP or cassette, $24.95 per CD, although you got a free copy of the LP with every $500 you donated to Marvin Bagman's mission. Despite the fact that the lyrics didn't rhyme or, as a rule, make any sense, and that Marvin, who was not particularly musical, had stolen all the tunes from old country songs, Jesus Is My Buddy had sold over 4 million copies. Marvin had started off as a country singer, singing old Conway Twitty and Johnny Cash songs. He had done regular live concerts from the San Quentin jail until the civil rights people got him under the cruel and unusual punishment clause. It was then that Marvin got religion. Not the quiet, personal kind that involves doing good deeds and living a better life. Not even the kind that involves putting on a suit and ringing people's doorbells, but the kind that involves having your own TV network and getting people to send you money. He had found the perfect TV mix on Marvin's Hour of Power, the show that put the fun back into Fundamentalist. 4 3-minute songs from the LP, 20 minutes of Hellfire, and 5 minutes of healing people. The remaining 23 minutes were spent alternately cajoling, pleading, threatening, begging, and occasionally simply asking for money. In the early days, he had actually brought people into the studio to heal, but he had found that too complicated, so these days he simply proclaimed visions vouchsafed to him of viewers all across America getting magically cured as they watched. This was much simpler. He no longer needed to hire actors, and there was no way anyone could check on his success rate. It might have surprised Marvin to know that there actually was a success rate. Some people will get better from anything. The world is a lot more complicated than most people believe. Many people believed, for example, that Marvin was not a true believer because he made so much money out of it. They were wrong. He believed with all his heart. He believed utterly and spent a lot of the money that flooded in on what he really thought was the Lord's work. The phone line to the Savior's always free of interference. He's in at any hour, day or night. And when you call JESUS, you always call toll free. He's the telephone repairman on the switchboard of my life. The first song concluded, and Marvin walked in front of the cameras and raised his arms modestly for silence. In the control booth, the engineer turned down the applause track. Brothers and sisters, thank you. Wasn't that beautiful? And remember, you can hear that song and others just as edifying on Jesus Is My Buddy. Just phone 1-800-CASH and pledge your donation now. He became more serious. Brothers and sisters, I've got a message for you all. An urgent message from our Lord. For you all, man and woman and little babes, friends, let me tell you about the apocalypse. It's all there in your Bible, in the revelation our Lord gave St. John on Patmos, and in the book of Daniel. The Lord always gives it to you straight, friends. Your future. So, what's going to happen? War, plague, famine, death. Rivers of blood, great earthquakes, nuclear missiles. Horrible times are coming, brothers and sisters, and there's only one way to avoid them. Before the destruction comes, before the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse ride out, before the nuclear missiles rain down on the unbelievers, there will come the rapture. What's the rapture, I hear you cry? When the rapture comes, brothers and sisters, all the true believers will be swept up in the air. It don't mind what you're doing. You could be in the bath, you could be at work, you could be driving your car, or just sitting at home reading your Bible. Suddenly, you'll be up there in the air, in perfect and incorruptible bodies, and you'll be up in the air looking down at the world as the years of destruction arrive. Only the faithful will be saved. Only those of you who have been born again will avoid the pain and the death and the horror and the burning. Then will come the great war between heaven and heaven will destroy the forces of hell, and God shall wipe away the tears of the suffering, and there shall be no more death, or sorrow, or crying, or pain, and he shall reign on in glory forever and ever. He stopped suddenly. Well, nice try, he said in a completely different voice, only it won't be like that at all. Not really. I mean, you're right about the fire and the war, all that, but that rapture stuff, well, if you could see them all in heaven, serried ranks of them as far as the mind can follow and beyond, league after league of us, flaming swords, all that, well, what I'm trying to say is who has time to go around picking people out and popping them up in the air to sneer at the people dying of radiation sickness on the parched and burning earth below them? If that's your idea of a morally acceptable time, I might add. And as for all that stuff about heaven inevitably winning, well, to be honest, if it were that cut and dry, there wouldn't be a celestial war in the first place, would there? It's propaganda, pure and simple. We've got no more than a 50% chance of coming out on top. You might just as well send money to a Satanist hotline to cover your bets, though to be frank, when the fire falls and the seas of blood rise, you lot are all going to be civilian casualties either way. Between our war and your war, they're going to kill everyone and let God sort it out, right? Anyway, sorry to stand here wittering, I've just a quick question. Where am I? Marvin O. Bagman was gradually going purple. It's the devil! Lord protect me, the devil is speaking through me! He erupted and interrupted himself. Oh no, quite the opposite in fact, I'm an angel. Ah, this has to be America, doesn't it? So sorry, can't stay. There was a pause. Marvin tried to open his mouth, but nothing happened. Whatever was in his head looked around. He looked at the studio crew, those who weren't phoning the police or sobbing in corners. He looked at the grey-faced cameraman. Gosh, he said, am I on television? Crowley was doing 120 miles an hour down Oxford Street. He reached into the glove compartment for his spare pair of sunglasses and found only cassettes. Irritably, he grabbed one at random and pushed it into the slot. He wanted Bach, but he would settle for the traveling Wilburys. "All we need is Radio Gaga," sang Freddie Mercury. "All I need is out," thought Crowley. He swung around the Marble Arch roundabout the wrong way, doing 90. Lightning made the London skies flicker like a malfunctioning fluorescent tube. A livid sky on London, Crowley thought, and I knew the end was near. Who had written that? Chesterton, wasn't it? The only poet in the 20th century to even come close to the truth. The Bentley headed out of London while Crowley sat back in the driver's seat and thumbed through the singed copy of the nice and accurate prophecies of Agnes Nutter. Near the end of the book he found a folded sheet of paper covered in Aziraphale's neat copperplate handwriting. He unfolded it, while the Bentley's gear stick shifted itself down to third and the car accelerated around a fruit lorry which had unexpectedly backed out of a side street, and then he read it again. Then he read it one more time, with a slow, sinking feeling at the base of his stomach. The car changed direction suddenly. It was now heading for the village of Tadfield, in Oxfordshire. He could be there in an hour if he hurried. Anyway, there wasn't really anywhere else to go. The cassette finished, activating the car radio. "Gardener's question time, coming to you from Tadfield Gardening Club. We were last here in 1953, a very nice summer, and as the team will remember, it's a rich Oxfordshire loam in the east of the parish, rising to chalk in the west. The kind of place, I say, doesn't matter what you plant there, it'll come up beautiful. Isn't that right, Fred?" "Yep," said Professor Fred Winbright, Royal Botanical Gardens. "Couldn't have put it better myself." "Right. First question for the team, and this comes from Mr. R.P. Tyler, chairman of the local Residents' Association, I do believe." "That's right. Well, I'm a keen rose grower, but my prize-winning Molly Maguire lost a couple of blossoms yesterday in a rain of what were apparently fish. What does the team recommend for this, other than place netting over the garden? I mean, I've written to the council. Not a common problem, I'd say. Harry? Mr. Tyler, let me ask you a question. Were these fresh fish or preserved?" "Fresh, I believe." "Well, you've got no problems, my friend. I hear you've also been having rains of blood in these parts, and I wish we had these up in Dales where my garden is. Save me a fortune in fertilizers. Now, what you do is, you dig them into your—" "Crowley." Crowley said nothing. "Crowley, the war has begun, Crowley. We note with interest that you avoided the forces we empowered to collect you." Crowley agreed. "Crowley, we will win this war, but even if we lose, at least as far as you are concerned, it will make no difference at all. For as long as there is one demon left in hell, Crowley, you will wish you had been created mortal." Crowley was silent. "Mortals can hope for death or for redemption. You can hope for nothing. All you can hope for is the mercy of hell." "Yeah, just our little joke," said Crowley. "Now, as keen gardeners know, it goes without saying that he's a cunning little devil, your Tibetan, tunnelling straight through your begonias like it was nobody's business. A cup of tea'll shift him, with rancid yak butter for preference. You should be able to get some at any good garden. Whee! Whiz! Pop!" Static drowned out the rest of the program. Crowley turned off the radio and bit his lower lip. Beneath the ash and soot that flaked his face, he looked very tired and very pale and very scared, and suddenly very angry. It was the way they talked to you, as if you were a houseplant who had started shedding leaves on the carpet. And then he turned a corner, which was meant to take him onto the slip road to the M25, from which he'd swing off onto the M40 up to Oxfordshire. But something had happened to the M25. Something that hurt your eyes if you looked directly at it. From what had been the M25 London orbital motorway came a low chanting, a noise formed of many strands, car horns and engines and sirens and the bleep of cellular telephones and the screaming of small children trapped by backseat seatbelts forever. "Hail the great beast, devourer of worlds," came the chanting over and over again in the secret tongue of the black priesthood of ancient Mu. The dreaded Sigillo Degra, thought Crowley, as he swung the car around, heading for the North Circular. "I did that. That's my fault. It could have just been another motorway. A good job, I'll grant you, but was it really worthwhile? It's all out of control. Heaven and hell aren't running things anymore. It's like the whole planet is a third world country that's finally got the bomb. Then he began to smile. He snapped his fingers. A pair of dark glasses materialized out of his eyes. The ash vanished from his suit and his skin. What the hell? If you had to go, why not go with style? Whistling softly, he drove.